Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mac and Chuck Video Podcast. Your host, Chuck Hill, and host, Scott McKenzie. Good evening, everyone.
It's a little different setup today, huh?
Just a little bit. Hi, Nancy. How you doing?
The reason this setup looks like this is because, well, for one, we had would you say COVID restrictions, and then also I had a little guy with a migraine today. So
yeah, it's been an interesting week for sure.
That it has.
Those, I think. Yeah.
Now you and I did find out some very shocking news today.
Yes, we did. And
so
you want to lead off with that?
Yeah, I will let you. You were the well spoken of the two of us.
Well, I don't know how true that is.
Come on, man! I'm trying to fluff your ego here.
I'm getting why don't you take it? I'm getting some feedback that they can't hear me. So if they can hear you, I'm gonna let you go into it, and I'm gonna grab the other mic real quick, and we'll just have
free time for me again. Fantastic. Now, Chuck and I found someone we went to school with, someone we knew, passed away last month. Don't know what the circumstances were. Don't know the reasoning behind it. Kind of a shock. We were in a couple groups together. I worked with this person, used to walk home with them from school. Now, granted, this was 30 years ago, but, I guess we still think we're young at the age of 47. So it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. Condolences to their family. I'll leave the name out of it for right now.
there's some definite truth to that for sure.
Right. So, Chuck, you want to throw up what we talked about there if you can?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna throw that up here real quick. I just need a real quick feedback if people can hear me or not.
Can people hear Chuck now? Can you hear him now? Now?
Now, can you hear me now?
Good.
This may be the Mac show tonight if they can't hear me.
Oh, no, nobody wants that.
I think you might be surprised at those who hear that.
Somebody says you're muffled.
Okay, Angie's saying that I'm muffled. So I think what we may do is...
No, Nancy says she can hear you.
Nancy says she can hear me. That's because I'm on actually DJ Whiteout's mic right now.
Oh, so I get to be the face of the show tonight? Do people really want that?
You might get to be the face of the show. Things real quick. And if anything, the show is going to look very different from what it normally looks like tonight.
Yeah, you could say that.
So anyway, yep, I'm going to throw that up here real quick, what we talked a bit about earlier today. So the bottom line is what happens a lot, folks, is we get the shocking news of friends of ours who have passed away, and we're not real sure if it's just a matter of
I don't know what you did here, but I'm kind of pixelated. Oh, there I am.
There you are. So
here I am.
Sometimes we don't know what happens, but we always want to take a moment just to say real quick that everyone is important. You matter, and we're glad that you're here. And unfortunately, it would appear that the person we're talking about may have taken their own life. But even if they hadn't, we learned some other things about some other people that have taken their own lives. And that's not, it's always sad when we get news like that, regardless of who it is, regardless of how bad things look out there for you. Um, there's always someone who cares, and there's always someone whose life that you've affected in a positive manner. And so we just want to make sure that we've got some lines up here during the show tonight. And the topic tonight, Mac and I went back and forth a little bit about whether we should, do this or if we should do kind of another mental health show. But it may seem a little macabre, but we still want to make sure that we are letting people know that, you know, y- we care, and regardless of the show, regardless of where we're going, or regardless of where we're at, that we want you here.
Well, even if it's not to watch the show, it's just here for people that care about you and don't want to be without you.
Right. Just an overall, we want you here, as in here on the planet. Until the good Lord calls you home, it's we want you to be here. And even if we don't know you, the impact that you've had on someone else's life, you may not ever know that. You may not ever even realize the impact that you have. And things can get pretty rough at times. And the numbers that we've got down here at the bottom, particularly the National Suicide Prevention line, and then there's also a chat line also, because it's not always easy for someone to pick up the phone. It's not always easy for someone, pardon me, it's not always easy for someone to reach out, but the chat lines will help you significantly if you're more of an introvert and you just don't like to pick the phone.
Well, it gives them a level of comfort that they may or may not need, but it's easier not to look at someone face to face or over the phone and try to explain. Because I think you and I know someone very well that's it's easier for them to put their thoughts into written or typed words other than speaking them directly to the person.
Right. Right. And sometimes that's always easier. We don't want to, bring anybody down or anything like that. We are going to
No,
continue to talk about what we brought up, or what we said we talked about today, being about serial killers and things like that. Hey, Mick, nice to see you out there. Appreciate you checking in with us. So we are going to be looking at those things. I'm going to kind of let Scott or let Mac take the helm just for a second while I get my stuff situated over here, folks. We apologize for the technical difficulties, but DJ Whiteout is not here tonight.
darn
I
darn
know,
remote sessions.
we've got a couple things we're working with tonight. So
Apparently none of them good.
Mac, why don't you start us off with just a little bit kind of about what the show is and kind of how it came about.
Well, we kind of hinted back and forth, and then kind of, I think last month or so, kind of want to talk about serial killers and throwing ideas around. Then the lovely Lisa decides to send both of us a great research stuff, and what she says is maybe just not. I mean, we could talk about the national ones, but maybe some well-known, maybe not serial killer so much, but maybe more of a really stories that really stand out in the area. Because I think you're going to get a lot more information if you stick close to home and kind of broaden the subject instead of just serial killers, say, high profile murders. There you go. So basically what we have here, kind of talk about, as you can tell, we're very prepared tonight.
Well, we're prepared. We just got things in different spots now.
Oh, we're playing chess. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. I'm going to try and bring up my notes, which are real close to the same notes that you have going on over there. Some of the just decided.
What did we talk about? There was a very detailed Samuel Little. Was that one? I believe it was.
Yes, he's one of the ones that's been kind of most recent, and he's actually being described as one of the most more prolific serial killers recently, and that's because of the number of just the confirmed victims that he has had.
Well, that's not even saying the ones that they haven't found yet.
Right. Right. Well,
Well,
he has recently passed, actually,
right.
and I want to say that the number of victims that he had at last count was a confirmed 93 or 94, something.
That's insane. How does someone, without getting into the mental aspect of it, how does someone even hide that many people and without being discovered? I mean, it's mind blowing.
Well, the biggest thing that people have found is that they typically choose people who are not going to be missed, and that was the case with Samuel Little. You know, it's the people that they choose. Prostitutes are big ones because prostitutes tend to live pretty solitary lives for the
Right.
most part, and they're in a pretty dangerous situation as it is. So, if they go missing for days at a time, no one reports them because they're just kind of out of the public eye. And then you look at addicts. Addicts will go on several times that they'll leave, um, and you know they just don't miss them because when they go on bingers or bins, people just don't
They're
really.
gone for 2, 3 days at a time.
Yeah, yeah, Nancy, we want to get to your comment. I'm going to post that up here real quick.
And that's a great point, Nancy. It really is.
So, Nancy just said she wants to make a comment about social media and suicide. Said a person took their life in a wooded area and some people came upon the body and posted a picture of it on social media. So please just call the authorities.
Not only is that wrong, that's disrespectful.
It's disrespectful and it's dehumanizing. And, we see a lot of that on social media. And to be honest with you, just the desensitization that we see going on in social media kind of has a lot to do with what we're talking about with the serial killers, and I mean, it could even go with suicide and comments like
Well,
that because
it seems like they're doing it more for a sensational type reaction, and that's the sad part about it. People do stuff for reactions now, and it's whether it's good, bad, dehumanizing, what have you. There's no call for it. There really isn't. Oh, it's just me. Bueller, Bueller. I guess it's just me, kids. But looking through this stuff here that we got, and a, a local tale is one of Michael Keller, who and again, I apologize for not doing the research on this, but it's he was taken from his home, I believe, for a robbery or something along those lines, and it drove, robbed him, murdered him, then drove him out to a silo out in over by the raceway and dumped his body. There were 4 people. 2 of them are in jail for murder. One of them's in jail for accessory. I actually went to grade school with the driver that is in prison right now. And it just became a subject of conversation with some of my old classmates from 6th grade on a post recently. And you just wonder where these people went wrong. Are they always that way? There are people and children that actually, sociopaths that were born, I guess, for lack of a better term, and it it really makes you wonder how these people tick. It really makes you wonder what their environment was. Makes you wonder how they got to the point of where they are. I mean, it's just amazing. Um, I don't know what happened to Chuck. Um, Somebody let me know if I'm still on. I see live. I see my mouth moving. Can you hear me? But I'll keep talking until somebody tells me to shut up. Um, there's I believe it was the BTK killer out of Kansas, who one of my, actually my ex-wife's aunt went to church. So if you really stop and think about that, that's mind blowing too. People like that just sink right into your community, go to church with you, sit right next to you at church, act like a normal person. They're actually this maniacal, crazy murderer. I can hear you now.
You can hear me now. All right.
Good. I thought I was on my own there for a minute, man. I was just rolling.
Nope, you're here. You always rolling and balling.
But I don't know if you heard of anything of what I said, but I was talking about the Michael Keller murder. I don't know if you worked with him or not, or if that was after your time or before your time.
The name does not ring a bell for me.
Okay. Lisa did say that she remembers that, and I remember it vividly. You know, we try not to mention names on here, but I mean, people can go back and do some math and look up some research on the murder. Like I told you, I knew the driver of the car, and that person's still in prison. Oh wait, you know, there's another parole hearing come up, I believe, next year. And it really makes you wonder, and you may want to touch on this, but it really makes you wonder where these people, what disconnect is in their head to make them have these urges to do this, have these feelings, you know, and it always starts out small. It always starts with a small animal and works its way up to a human. It lacks comprehension on my part.
I often wonder if it's, you know, and it's a big controversy, the question about whether or not is this a matter of are people born this way? I mean, I know that we're all born broken, but the question is, do you grow into something like this? Is it something that's mental in our heads that maybe?
And that's a great point, because people always say, well, he's done this stuff his whole life. You know, like I said, it always starts with pulling legs off of frogs or pulling wings off of birds, or, you know, just abnormal behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I had kind of hoped to have one of our friends on tonight, but I wasn't able to confirm with her about the the mental part of this, like the
Right.
psychological part of this. Is there something that's, you know, can be taught? Like, can it be fixed? Is this something that can be fixed when we're younger, or is it something that we just it's just
It
who we
just is. It just is.
Yeah, you know, I mean, so I don't know the answer to that myself. Hey Don, good to see you on here. You know, I don't know the answer to this myself. Um, I know people who have sadistic tendencies,
Thank you.
but I don't necessarily.
My not to break up here, but my intern son brought me show notes I finally decided to print.
Nice, nice. So yeah,
Thank you, intern kid. You don't get any money for that.
I don't know if these are things that can be changed in people as they're growing up.
Well, I mean, if we look back at you know, the high profile people that, you know, Son of Sam, there's all these people, you know, was it Richard Ramirez?
Yeah, well, look at Charlie Manson. I mean, when you
they were never apologetic.
You know, well, they were not apologetic. They not only that, but even Manson. I mean, Manson didn't necessarily kill anyone himself, but he was sadistic enough that he led those killings. Like he talked other people into it.
Well, and that's a great point, to see the power that he had over these people to control their minds, control their thoughts. You know, that's how manipulative people in that mindset can be, and it's amazing.
Right, right. And then there are people that, you know, were mistreated as children, so they kind of grow into this of behavior. You know, it's kind of how they feel, or kind of how they you know, they feel that they were treated with such horrendous they were treated so horrendously that that's how they relate to other people, and sometimes they just break, they just snap, you know.
Well, that's true, but that's different than someone who has been a sociopath their entire life, even from, you know, a very small child.
But even, you know, being a sociopath, does that make you a murderer? Like, does that automatically make you a murderer?
To me, there's a difference between a sociopath at a very young age and someone who has just taken so much over the course of their life that their brain just snaps. To me, there's a big difference. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, a psychological professional, but to me, that would just make sense that they may be a good person up to a point where their mind just snaps, because there's even parts that I've read to where someone can have a major traumatic episode happen in their life, and that's what may trigger schizophrenia. I mean, I've even read that before.
Right. And then, I mean, then you play PTSD into it.
Right.
People not knowing how to do. I mean, we hear of our soldiers coming back, that, sometimes, we were talking about the suicidal tendencies at the beginning. And then, talking about soldiers coming back, and sometimes they just kind of, they snap or they think they're somewhere else.
Right.
Uh, but I think that what we're, looking at here is, more like, people who just like, again, you take, well, there was a murderer, a few, well, back in the 70s named Kevin Christensen. And he would bind his victims with rope. And then the way he would kill them was, I mean, now this is true sadist behavior right here, is he would actually take the cap off of hot sauce bottles and pour it down their throat to the point that they would asphyxiate. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's really some, and I'm not using that word in a positive manner, but creative ways that some of these people go about their business, and you know,
Yeah, the right creative doesn't quite. It sounds like it's giving it the glory that none of that should have.
right, right. I mean, it's really crazy, and like we mentioned earlier, I mean, if you there's video out there on Samuel Little, who we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
If you just watch some of the video of this guy, there's no remorse, really. I mean, he kind of gloats and he kind of takes glee in what he was able to do and able to accomplish. It's really, really messed up. Um,
Well, even the ones that we knew of growing up, like your John Wayne Gacy's and your
yeah,
Jeffrey Dahmers.
yeah,
I mean, the way they went about that and the reactions to them, just going on about their daily lives after they've done what they did. It like I said before, it doesn't process in my brain. So that really makes you wonder how off these people really are. I mean, you have to be off to want to kill someone first off, but the methodical way they went about it, it's I don't know. I don't know the word for it, to be honest.
So here's kind of where you and I may differ a little bit, and as people know, sometimes we do have differing opinions. I don't really necessarily think that you have to be off your rocker to want to kill somebody, because quite honestly, I know I'm not confessing to anything here.
There's you are correct in the sense of what you just said if you term it that way. The follow through is what makes all the difference.
I would say methodical follow through, if you're talking about that, because I think that there are crimes of passion all the time. People lose control of their emotions and they control of their or lose control of their just
Which is why there are
being,
laws that state
right?
that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you really have to wonder again. Getting back to one of the original points, is you have to wonder what really is it inside of a human being that can make them decide that I'm going to not only kill someone, but I'm going to hunt them. I'm going to figure out and target a specific type of person, and that's how I'm going to do it. And I, I wonder if there isn't a thought that just goes through their mind. It's like, I wonder if I can do it and get away with it.
Right.
And like in the case of Little, we look at, he was getting away with it for a long time. And there's even a St. Louis connection to Little. It says that between 76 and 79, that Little had two victims, one from East St. Louis and then a 26-year-old woman from right here in Granite City. So, I mean, if you want to talk about local, I mean, it doesn't get much local than that for you and I.
Right. Right.
So it's pretty crazy to think that there are people out there that uh, it's the hunt, and what I said earlier, I think it may kind of be the hunt that is the thrill for them. Um, and maybe that's what sets their mind off. Folks, we'd love to hear your feedback on this and just kind of what you think.
Well,
Just
if you throw in local or like you just said, I mean, you have to talk about the Chain of Rocks murders, Chain of Rocks Bridge.
oh yeah, yeah, and that was like close to us,
That
it's
was what, our
in
senior
high
year,
school. Yeah,
1991,
yeah, back in
somewhere
that
in that neighborhood.
was Carrie's sisters, I believe, Julie and Robin Carey.
The name sounds right.
Yeah, yeah, so they were just out there at China Rocks Bridge with a cousin of theirs, and all they were, they wanted to just show a poem that someone had written, and while they were there, they had a conversation with this guy and some other men, and then later on, they were approached and surrounded, um, by see it says here, forcing Cummins to the ground, and Julian and Robin. So let me throw a disclaimer up here real quick, folks. Tonight's show is really not for kids. If you have kids, you might want to have them, find something else to do tonight, or maybe catch the show later on this week. Typically, I would never say something like that, but some of the things we're talking about is pretty sensitive, and it's never ever meant to glorify any of these guys. But just to kind of get back to the story, it tells that Julie and Robin were raped repeatedly by Clemens and another co-defendant, and Clemens, he denied being the one that pushed him from the bridge. But he said that he did nothing to physically prevent the girls from being pushed into the river, and he stayed at the manhole, preventing their escape. Marlon Gray, who was one of the defendants in that case, he was executed in 2005. Angie tells us here, says like it goes back to something primitive, the hunter mentality. Uh, that could be what it is. Is that a lot of people, they just kind of get that mentality, the thrill of the hunt. It's just like, when we hunt deer or when we hunt, I'm not a buffalo hunter by any means, but
I guess that's what differentiates us from them is we can separate those two. We can process thought, and which makes me go back to thinking that it's probably some disconnect in the brain from a young age, or like we said earlier, something in their life caused them to snap.
yeah. But my curiosity about all that is, where does the okay come from? When you look at someone who's mentally ill, like the son of Sam killer, he thought that his dog was telling him to kill, people. And
Right.
some people think that, God is, telling them to smite people. And it's just kind of crazy to think that, people think that way. Or in the Manson killings, we talked about a little bit earlier, it's crazy to think that you can be talked into it. If you think about it, it even goes back to the mind washing that can happen with people. I mean, look at David Koresh at Branch Davidian.
Mm-hmm.
All those people just mind washed into, or brainwashed into into believing that he was God.
Well, you bring up a point to that, and the fact of these people already had some sort of belief, and he just manipulated that in for his own purpose.
Yeah.
So it's fine to sit here and try to speculate on exactly what was going through someone's mind or what they were thinking, but I do believe your point of there's something wrong there to begin with. There's some kind of disconnect in your mind that
So
causes them to act
it's a
out.
brokenness from birth.
Some are like I'll take both. I think both instances can occur. You can be broken from birth, where there's something wrong with the synapses in your brain, or you can just be on overload, have PTSD, and something in your mind just causes you to snap. I mean, let's take for example sports athletes that have CTE. Their brain is just so marred by concussion that they actually go off the deep end, and many of them have killed themselves because of it.
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear some of the people who are watching, like, what is your fascination with this particular topic or this particular subject. I know there are a lot of people who love shows like Criminal Minds. I'm a big Criminal Minds fan. There are a lot of people like there's a new show on Netflix called Mindhunter. Have you seen it yet?
I have not.
So it's a really interesting show because it starts about or it talks about how FBI profiling actually started. And like this is not something that they even did. I want to say the show takes place in the early 70s. So even prior to that, they couldn't really get an idea of what made these people tick or what kind of profiles they could look at to even begin to look for these people. And it was really interesting to watch this and just kind of how the BAU was kind of formed. And for those of you who don't know, BAU is Behavior Analysis Unit from the FBI. And these are people who go out and they profile killers based on clues and things found at the scene of the crime and those types of situations. And it's really interesting that they can identify, mentally they can mentally identify a person without even meeting them. They already know who the guy is. They just have to find the body that goes with it. Like they're already inside the mind of these people. So it's very interesting.
Hey, thanks, Lisa.
I'm going to throw up Lisa's comment here and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Lisa says, interesting case, 6-year-old Beth Thomas was in a 1992 documentary called Child of Rage. Her and her brother were adopted out of a severely violent and abusive situation. Her adoptive parents had to lock her in a room at night as she admitted she wanted to stab her family and her brother to death. She was admitted for intensive behavioral modification therapy. And she was actually treated by that one therapist that had created rebirthing as a type of treatment where she would, let's see what's that, wrap, at least I think you may have to more. I don't think it's all going to show up there. But, it looks like that next word might be trophies. And that's kind of been a big thing also with, serial killers. I'm not sure if any of you have seen recently HBO Max and also on TV, The Little Things with Denzel Washington and Jared Leto. It was actually an interesting movie. When you get past the first half of it,
I was waiting for that.
It's just a matter. I mean, as far as the movie goes, it's really just a matter of how people think. And
there's the second part.
All right, there's the second part of Lisa's. Wrap troubled kids in blankets and pushing them against pillows for 70 minutes to stimulate being born. But her point is that this is severely psychopathic child was not neglected, and she had tons of help to try and help her. She works as a nurse now and leads a very normal life, and has authored a book called More Than a Thread of Hope. Sad part is most troubled kids don't get this type of help and attention. And that's a good point, Lisa. A lot of people don't get the help that they need because it's not identified early, or even worse, a parent will just let it go, and they'll be not my little Johnny wouldn't do that.
Right. Not only that too, but I mean, look how backed up all these social workers and these divisions of child services and all. These people are so backed up, and I don't know if that's just from recognizing it early now, or things in society that attribute to it, or there could be a number of things that attribute it. But a lot of these kids now are just lost in the system.
You bring up an interesting point about social work, and that and there's a lot of trauma that goes on, in the social system, and whether it's a residential situation or whether it's a foster situation where there's been violence for the child or for the I'll call them victims, because some of them are, some of these killers are victims themselves. I personally believe that there's a responsibility. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Where does the responsibility lie? Like, does the responsibility, in your opinion, does it lie with society? Does the responsibility lie with the parents? Does the responsibility even lie just within the person themselves?
In my view, and this is just me, I don't know if the person can identify them as being broken
right now. So,
I
said you're the only one that can see right now, so we know it's just you.
Anyway, clown. I think it could be the person who is committing all the stuff doesn't identify. So there's a miss in the identification of what they're doing is wrong. Now, from a parental point of view, it could be a number of things. It could be the child isn't acting out around them, just out in public when the parent isn't around. It could be, like you said before, them not wanting to admit something like that could be wrong with their kid. From a parental point of view, it's everything. And from a societal point of view, where we are right now, can the state really do much without the parents say so? I mean, they could take the child away, but we've seen instances in different areas where the child has been given back to the parent when the parent has been abusive because they don't want to split the family up. And I think that might be part of the microcosm that envelops this whole situation is state, parent, child.
Well,
I think that's caused a lot of issues.
it's interesting that you say that because Nancy's got a good point here. She says, maybe a cut in funding from the services or cut
But that's huge.
and that could absolutely be a huge part of it. Because as states go broke, there's less mental health. And let's be honest here. There's not a lot of focus put on mental health care, not near as much as there is on physical health care.
Right.
And so I think that could be a big part of it also. And I think that misidentifying things at a child's younger and formative years, I agree with you. I think it could be, um, a big part that plays in this. I think, and again, folks, you're just hearing opinions tonight. You're not hearing any professionals or anything like that. Just two dudes jawing back and forth and hoping you're listening to us a little bit.
No, but I think we're getting a little off topic just on the underlying things that cause all these killers. I mean, and that could be a show within itself, quite frankly. But I don't think we're completely off topic. I think we're keeping in with the, what makes these people tick thought process. We're keeping up with the actual delving into the how they tick, for lack of a better phrase. Because, I don't think I could say this enough. I couldn't fathom doing what these people do because I'm not them. My brain doesn't work the way theirs does. So it's really hard to sit down and say, okay, this is what they were thinking, because you don't know. You don't know what goes through someone's mind. You don't know the urge to do this 90 something times and hide the bodies and think everything's okay.
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you something that I don't tell many people. I'm about to tell all the people here that are listening and those who will listen moving forward is there have been times where I've been pushed to the point of wanting to, not like on a grand scale or anything like that, but basically disappearing somebody. I mean, and it's been, there have been times it's been like, man, I've made complete plans. I mean, you and I have a mutual friend. I mean, he's pretty sadistic at times, and he could come up with some pretty crazy stuff to the point that I would be like, wow, man, there's something broke in you. What is wrong
Right.
with you? But then when you get to a point in your life or a point of
I've had all I can stand. I can't stand no more. There,
yeah,
Papa.
pretty much, Papa. Yeah, I mean, you start to plan these things, and for me, there are two things that stop me from hurting someone to that point.
You would not last in jail is number one.
Well, okay, three things.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't last the first night, but I mean, first of all, just my moral compass tells me that it's wrong.
Right.
So I have that. And then jail time is the other one. I don't want to spend any time in jail, and my kids.
You really don't want to drop the soap, do you?
No.
No. I get that.
It's like when you're in the military, you get soap on a rope.
So, what are you trying to say?
Angela has a comment here. She says, also until recently, society norm has dictated that girls or women are supposed to talk about feelings, but guys aren't supposed to, as if it's less manly to talk about what may be going on inside.
And I think that's the stigma we grew up with, and she couldn't be more correct there, and I'm glad she brought it up.
Right. Yeah. She's spot on there. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you read some of these stories, you do read that some of these predators, that's probably the better word I think I'd like to
Yeah.
use instead of, some of these predators, they do have pent up emotional distress, and they do have pent up emotion or frustration with people. And maybe they don't want to hurt someone who's close to them. But, you're right, Angie, with, society being the way it is now, human lives are disposable. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, they really are. And if it's not someone that's close to you and you can make someone else disappear that no one else is going to find out about, why not? So, and I say why not, not in as it's okay to do it, but just a question that might go through the head of or the brains of someone who's thinking along those lines.
Right. And I have a question to pose to you and everyone that's listening. So please comment on this. Um, how much of, and this isn't a knock on anything, but how much of the internet has desensitized these people to do acts like this? I mean, it's a fair question.
No, it's totally a fair question. I was laughing at Lisa's comment.
Yeah, I know the name she's talking about. So we'll just keep swimming.
Here's what I would say to that. I think that the internet has done a real disservice to society. And I say it's funny because the social networks have actually caused us to become more antisocial than before. And I think that it's easy to sit behind a keyboard and mouth off to somebody. And I think it's really easy.
I think we've said that before.
Right. I think it's real easy to sit behind a keyboard and say to someone, you're
Things
worth
you wouldn't say to them in person.
right, exactly. But to belittle someone, to berate someone, to make fun of someone, and things like that, and it's completely and totally it's done a fantastic job of desensitizing mankind.
Right.
And I say mankind to include every person here, but that's even that's my point. I think it's done. People are 10 foot tall and bulletproof when they're sitting behind a keyboard because there's no one there to punch them in the mouth for saying what they should.
Well, in that case, here, let me go type away on what I got to say to you, chump. No.
I know where you live.
I moved.
Not according to your picture right now.
I moved. See, 2 inches.
Gotcha. So, Angie says, or even those shows that you guys mentioned earlier, Angie, that again, that's a good point. Shows like Criminal Minds, we see these things and
it kind of maps it out to where people's like, well, let me write this down. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do this.
Right.
Well, maybe I can get away with it. And then another show pops up like, oh, I didn't think of that one. So they write it down. I get the point of entertainment and all this, but Angie does have a good point in bringing it back up. And again, I'll go with TV, cinema, internet, all these combinations where people have been desensitized over the years. I remember in the 50s, they didn't have blood and gore. They had the thought of something happening was supposed to be the fright.
Right.
Whereas when we were growing up, you saw blood spurt out of a bed in Nightmare on Elm Street and thought that was gross. Now somebody gets decapitated and you're like, ugh, but it doesn't have that same effect as when you first saw it. So that's what I mean by the desensitization. Desensitization.
Right. I got you. And I agree with you. I think that, TV has definitely done that. Movies have definitely done that. I agree 100% that that's a big part of what's to blame. And
right.
So again, that kind of goes to the point of, is that a societal thing? I mean, there used to be lines that would be drawn.
At least it brings up a good point there too.
Lisa says that she thinks it's a combination of a person's chemical makeup in their brain, lack of control and monitoring, and the constant broadcast of violence and gore. But big exclamation point there.
Is this you emphasizing but instead of saying LOL?
Someone can experience all of these and still come out the other side okay. So,
Well, that's
Lisa,
absolutely true.
yeah, I mean, it is true. And Lisa, my question to you would be, what's the breaking point? Like, what is the thing that just really kind of tips the scale for them a little bit to where it's like, look, I know I've got problems. I know that, there's something wrong with me, but I'm able to keep myself in check. Well, where would you say, or where would you think the tipping point for that would be? Would that
My personal biggest thing on that would be having 100% proof that you can get away with it. No one would ever find out.
I think I'd agree with that. Those, if you guys could see me, I'd be shaking my head in agreement right now because
We can't see anything but a picture. I'm sure that you've taken of a wall and fence.
yes, it's actually out at the Confluence Towers here in good old Granite City, Illinois.
I thought that was Hartford, but hey, I digress.
Yes, well, I think we're both digressing a little bit.
Shut up. Nancy says even the news that aired the actual events in Tiananmen Square in 1989. I remember watching that. I remember the man standing in front of the tank.
Oh,
I remember watching that on the nightly news. When it was still at 5:30. When cable news was just starting.
yeah,
But I remember watching that. It's shocking, but again, it doesn't go to what you see now with people blowing up neighborhoods, setting things on fire, killing people in broad daylight, carjacking people. I just read today that there was someone that got assaulted in Schnucks parking lot.
yeah.
I mean, in broad daylight. I mean, people don't care anymore.
It's, and I think that a lot of it is, I think a lot of it does have to do with that question, and yeah, I think this goes for any type of predator, whether it's a sexual predator, a physical predator, someone who wants to hurt people. I think it comes down to the question for those who are even asking the question is, am I going to get caught?
Right.
I think it comes down to that. I think, I truly believe that there are people who are mentally ill and can't help themselves and need to be removed from society for everybody's welfare, not just the welfare.
Well, and there's also.
Yes, absolutely, because eventually it's going to get them killed themselves.
Right.
So I think that the news in particular has done a fantastic job of desensitizing the American, or not just the American public, the world in general.
Mhm.
Us Americans tend to take things a little further than we probably should.
Well, it's all that's up for debate.
Some countries are just a little more locked down. I think that we've gotten to a point here though where um, there's not severe enough punishment. And like you've heard the term suicide by cop before, right?
Right. And I know someone, actually, I might know two people that actually did that.
So I mean, there could be a matter of a person, you know, feeling these tendencies or things like that. Um, and then they want to get caught, so they do it anyway. I mean, they may ask
Mhm.
themselves a question, well, am I going to get caught? Well, maybe I am going to get caught, but I'm such a terrible person. I need to get caught. And
Yeah,
therefore,
but how much, what percentage of people do you lay that on?
oh, I'm sure it's going to be minimal.
Right.
Yeah, I think it would be minimal. Nancy asked, do you think some of the assaults like Schnook could be a result of the COVID crisis? Nancy, that's a really good point.
I don't know if I have the answer for that. I
Yeah,
mean, it could be, it could be. If you heard people, if you, if, and I blame people that are always in front of the camera on these newscasts, whether it be politicians or celebrities or what have you,
yeah,
saying that, oh, it's okay. I'm sure they just wanted a loaf of bread. It really feeds into the acceptance that, oh, this is okay. I can go ahead and do it.
right, right. And that's that whole lack of consequence. Christina, thank you so much for bringing this up. She says, Do you think that the gaming world has helped with the violent outbursts? Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to explain to you, or to not really explain, but just agree with you more. I think that that's had a huge impact because if you think about it, when we went to school, when we were back in high school, we didn't have games like Call of Duty and Zombie Wars and things like that. We didn't have games where we were blowing the hell out of people.
We had Street Fighter 2.
We did, but think about it this for a second. If you think about games like Street Fighter, they were very pixelated, they were very cartoony. I mean, good lord, we grew up with Tom and Jerry where they beat the hell out of each other every Saturday morning, you know? But, Chris, when you think about these things with the games, I mean, there's huge desensitization or desensitization,
Well,
whatever, going going on.
you don't say. No, but you do bring up a point, and so does Chris, about the games and desensitization. Whoo, got it. And from like you said, the cartoons we watched growing up, I thought it was just humor. Even the Three Stooges, they had to start putting disclaimers on that because people would go around poking each other in the eyeballs.
I don't even know you can watch the Three Stooges anymore, to be honest with you.
Yes, you can.
Anyway, we'll talk about that later on.
I don't know what channel, but you can find it. But I just thought it was funny. I didn't think going around smacking someone in a head with a ball bat, they'd get a lump on their head that would run. But
right.
But I think Chris's point right here makes all the difference. Gotten to look a lot more realistic as time goes on. And that is absolutely true. They're going for the most realistic look they can get. And I think that in and of itself has really made, maybe not the word acceptable, but it's made it more mainstream. We'll use that.
Well, you know what? I would actually say acceptable would be a good word to attach to that, because it is. I mean, you look at some of some of the things that go on here, on these games. It does become acceptable because when they're playing through the games, there's no real consequence. You die. There's no consequence. Even if you die in the games, you just respawn.
You get a cheat code for extra lives.
But I mean, there's video games, TV, and folks, to tie all this in, the show is about serial killers, and I had wanted.
But I don't think we're really getting off topic. I mean, we're really talking about how these people could, and I think that's an important part of understanding. You can know what they did, like
right.
The Son of Sam killer, like Richard Ramirez. You can know what all these people did, but I think really once you start getting into the societal effects and how these people tick in their brain,
right,
it really tries to get to the core of what can we do as a society to stop that. I think once we identify this stuff, it makes it a lot easier to combat this stuff.
Right. I agree. You have to get to the root cause of the issue.
So I don't think we're really getting off topic here. We're taking the topic in a different direction, but I think it's definitely still relatable.
Right. And that's kind of where I was going with it, is that, it's never a good idea to glorify what they're doing, but it's more important to understand why they do what they do and how they get to that point and how do we stop it.
Do you see Lisa's point? That's I didn't think of that. That's a great point.
She said
that's a fantastic point.
Pesticides, chemicals in food, lotions that we are constantly putting into and on our bodies throughout the years is causing chemical and psychological changes within our brains.
Well, not only our brains, but our organs as well.
Yeah, Lisa, I'd agree with you 100%. I mean,
that's a fantastic point. That's a great point. I mean, really, what are we putting in our bodies now? I mean, I just read something the other day that showed 4 different products between here and England, and the level of chemicals and dyes that we're putting in our body over here is just astronomical when you look at the ingredient labels from, let's say, Mountain Dew. I mean, if you look at a Mountain Dew label from here to England, they're adding like 4 different dyes and all these chemicals in it. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, there are definitely different things that our FDA will allow that other countries do not allow.
Right.
So Lisa says UK's banned.
She's right, and she's absolutely right, and vice versa, honestly, because I think I'm going to talk to you guys about haggis is a combination of liver, kidneys, heart, and stomach over in Scotland, but over here it's without the stomach because of certain microbial things in the stomach that the FDA won't allow here. So it really does kind of go both ways, but I did look at those labels, and it was, if you get a chance to look up food ingredients between the United States and the UK and really see that really goes along with Lisa's point. I think that's a great one to make.
It really is. And Christine, if you could just elaborate a little more on what's acceptable. Are you asking about the food ingredients? Are you asking about behavior? Are you asking, like, you brought up the video games. Are you more asking like what would be acceptable?
Me acting 12 on occasions, that's acceptable.
I don't know that that's the exception.
You shut up. Before you get banned in the UK.
So, it's interesting that the show kind of took this direction because I do agree we have on the food. Thanks, Chris.
On the food.
Appreciate that. Yeah. I think it's really important I really do think it's important to understand the root cause of these issues that we face, and hope no one ever wants to know that their kid did something terrible or horrible or something like that. So it's really important to understand where this happened from, and it's interesting. Acceptable on the food. If you look at grain that we eat now as opposed to grain that we ate 7 years ago, it's completely and totally different.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what's acceptable, quite honestly, the way that it seems to work, and this is going to sound a little political, it depends on
No, not you.
It depends on who pays the most money to get their ingredient into the food and how cheap they can make the food if they had something else.
I don't think that's political. I think that's factual.
Well, what we consider factual, other folks may consider political. So, but no, Chris, you make a really good point there.
Well, I mean, what foods now are, without screaming squirrel and going over here to a completely different topic, is organic really 100% non-chemical anymore?
So when I was in the food business, we had to take classes and things like that. And the word organic is a very fluid word.
Mm-hmm.
Organic to one company may mean something completely different to another company.
Right.
You may see something that says organic, or it may say 100% organic, and both are true. Which, it may have organic.
Again, that helps the consumer incredibly.
Yeah. So I think Angie's trying to bring us back on task here. Angie says, I personally know someone who committed a heinous crime and to this day doesn't think he did anything wrong.
Are you going to say that too?
No.
SMH.
There you go. Why don't you shake your head, Scott, so everyone knows it. There you go.
I just stirred my brain a little.
And that's interesting because it could be a matter of perception also. He may genuinely, or they, I don't know, he or say he. Yeah, he.
No. Yeah.
Genuinely believe he did nothing wrong, though when you look at the rules of society, it's absolutely wrong. So then it's a matter of perception. But
right. Well, maybe he's trying to justify it too. Maybe to him it was justified.
Right, but what it comes down to again, though, is that moral compass that people have or don't have, or it comes down to that.
Oh, that makes it even more interesting.
There's an entire show on that topic right there. Maybe at some point we can talk about, preaching and preachers who aren't real preachers and people who want to preach for the glory of themselves as opposed to the glory of God.
Right.
And then the money preachers, but so it's an interesting world that we have out there. It's definitely a broken world, and
it's definitely gotten a lot smaller over the last 25 years.
It has, and even just over the last year, with COVID, it's just gotten to be a much more mentally stressful world. And I think that that's one of the reasons that we can attribute the rising.
Which is a reason we have this right there. I mean, that's a great point. Is with all this COVID stuff, people feeling isolated. You know, there could be a lot of justification just to get out of the house and do these things. You know, you might have snapped and broke something sitting here in your house for the last year.
Right. So I think for me, and Mac, you can give some final thoughts here in just a minute yourself. But for me, I think that when it comes down to physical predators, whether they're sexual murderers or whatever the case may be, for me, I believe that it is something that's broken within us. I believe it's a mental. I believe that people are mentally broken. I think that there's some ego that goes into a lot of that, which also goes into the mentally broken part of there's narcissism.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge part of it.
Yeah, there's a God complex that goes into a lot of it, and I think that if we as a society put more focus on the mental health of our friends and our family, and we treated it like an impairment, just like we did anything physical, that we would see a sharp decline in this. Sadly, I don't know that it's going to get any better before too long. If anything, it may be a rather cynical viewpoint. I think it could possibly get worse moving forward until we just degrade as a society.
Well, I think for that to stop, we as a society have to take the hard look at ourselves and try to reestablish what's really important. And I think people now might be too selfish to want to do that. They just want to go on with their lives, live their lives, what have you. But I think if anything over this last week has shown me anything with the whole people banding together to put a couple hedge funds out of business with the whole short selling scandal. I really don't call it a scandal. I call it the short selling thing that happened.
Leveling the playing field, but that's just me.
No, I would definitely agree with that. That's a good way to term it. But I would look at, because with that you see the power of community. You see the power of what people can do when they have one singular focus.
So Lisa says Minority Report is right around the corner, and I kind of agree with you on that.
I want to be Tom Cruise.
You're no Tom Cruise.
Damn it.
But then again, I'm no Tom Cruise either.
Yeah, well.
Well, folks, we want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. We know we kind of went a little bit all over the place, but I think that it's well, let's get this comment in here from Christina real quick.
Both.
Do you think that it's actually gotten worse, or do you think that with more media presence, we just see it more? That's a good
both.
Point. Yeah,
both.
I would have to agree with that. Yeah, I think one kind of fuels the other, to be honest with you. I think that we've got the media that fuels the people, and when people commit heinous crimes, that they're fueling the media, and it's just this vicious cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So
because I mean, they have to cover something for a 24-hour news cycle, right?
Right. Remember we used to do a weekly news cycle?
No, I remember a nightly news cycle, but
yeah. So, all right, folks. Well, with that, I think we're going to scoot up on out of here.
Well, we apologize for the technical difficulties, even though I had no part in it. It's all his fault. I'd still feel, since my name's on the show, I should take some kind of.
Well, actually, I'm going to blame it on DJ Whiteout tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, fine. I blame him too.
He's not here to defend himself, and
it's easier that way, right? Pick on the people that aren't there.
So no, he's enjoying the Super Bowl tonight with his family. Oh, I can't say that. I can't say that. The big game. He's enjoying the big game. He's enjoying the big game tonight with his family. So.
Why are we still talking? Because they're going to get rid of this last minute. You might as well just say it repetitively.
All right, folks. With that, thanks for coming out tonight and watching us and listening to us babble for an hour. Appreciate it.
Pretty much that's what it was.
Yeah. Hey, you guys have a great weekend. We will catch you guys on the flip side and see you next Sunday at 6.